Welcome back to Morning Line. We thought we'd shift gears just at the end of the show. We've got a different guest here. It's no longer Professor Weil. This is Carol Mansour, who's with us this morning, and she's here to talk to us about Baha'is of Middle Tennessee marking the 200th
anniversary of the birth of the founder of the faith.
Okay. Now, and I'm familiar with Baha'i temples, having grown up around one in Illinois. There was a wonderful, wonderful Baha'i temple there on the banks of the Lake Michigan. Now, here in Middle Tennessee, there's the Baha'í Faith, as there is all around the country. Give folks just a little bit of, the founder and give them the basics, what they need to know, because I know a lot of folks out there aren't familiar with it.
All right, I'll give you the elevator speech.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's good.
To be a Baha'i simply means to love all the world, to love humanity and try to serve it, to work for universal peace and universal brotherhood.
Do you accept then members from other faiths? Is that how it is, or is that a faith unto itself?
It is a faith unto itself. Okay. Which leads me to another elevator speech.
Please do.
It's the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. So Baha'u'llah taught that there's one God. All of the religions of the world spring from the same divine source, which is why all of them have a variation on the Golden Rule. And that all of the people of the world are one human family, and they're all equal in the sight of God.
Okay.
And when he was born 200 years ago, this was a revolutionary concept. Today, people are more apt to just sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, I believe that all people are equal. But we don't internalize the oneness of humanity, which leads to a lot of the issues that we have today. Because if I look at you truly as my equal, I'm going to make sure that you've got clean, fresh water. I'm going to make sure that your children are educated. I'm going to make sure that you can live in a peaceful, loving community. So Baha'u'llah gives us the tools to actually achieve a peaceful, loving world.
Where do you worship here in Middle Tennessee?
We have a center on Bell Road, 56 Bell Road. And a lot of our activities, though, take place in neighborhoods. And so you won't see a lot of necessarily evidence of large events going on at the Baha'i Center, but in neighborhoods we'll have classes for children, we'll have youth groups, we'll have people exploring spiritual concepts in gatherings and homes. Roughly
how many members would you say? You got a handle on it in the Middle Tennessee area? Is it growing?
In Middle Tennessee, I would say probably 600 to 700.
Okay.
And yes, it's growing.
Okay, and the event, we want to talk a little bit about that. I think we have some images that we can show as well of the event celebrating the 200th anniversary. Tell us a bit about that.
Right, yeah, the Bicentenary is the 200th anniversary of the birth of the founder of the Baha'í Faith, and there are going to be events all over Middle Tennessee, starting Friday night in Nashville at the Baha'í Center. There'll be events Friday night and Saturday night at the Baha'í Center, and then we've been sort of having a friendly competition among the communities, who's going to have the best one. In Hendersonville, they're going to have a 24-voice children's choir. Cool. Nashville's going to have a national champion dulcimer player and a gospel choir, and in Williamson County, we're going to have Danny Flowers, a singer-songwriter. We're going to have African drums. So Murfreesboro's having a dinner. All of the events are free. And in Murfreesboro, though, you'll need to register in advance, and you can get information about that if you go to the NashvilleBaha'i.org website.
So this is over the celebration is over a whole week, basically.
The whole weekend.
Whole weekend, okay.
Right, and then there's additional events coming up next weekend,
where you can go. Light of the World, that's the documentary.
That's the documentary about the life of Baha'u'llah, and that's also going to be shown Sunday at the Baha'í Center.
Oh, okay, all right, and so that's, I guess then, is the idea of this, hopefully, and you're coming on this show now, maybe some people are hearing about it, believe it or not, for the first time, is you're inviting folks to come out and check it out if they're not sure. And what if someone is watching who is a Catholic or a Baptist or something along those lines? What would you say to them? Not, I mean, they love their faith, but...
Well, absolutely. I would say that Baha'u'llah came to bring people closer to God. Okay. So come hear what he has to say, and you can use the tools that he brought. He brought the tool of consultation, actually sitting down and listening to people and not being attached to your ideas. And we can always use help in the spiritual transformation of the planet. Because if we're all coming closer to God, then we're all in effect coming closer to each other. So by all means, come hear what the teachings of the Baha'i Faith are, and we're not allowed to proselytize, so we're not going to try to sell you on the idea that, you know, this is the path for you, but we're all big believers in prayer. So come hear what the teachings are, pray about it, and see if this is something that appeals to you.
That's interesting. Unlike some religions, you're not allowed to proselytize.
No.
I like that.
Because the idea is that if I'm having to try to convince you, then you're thinking of reasons why this is not going to work. So you have to be open to the idea of considering it.
Right.
And if you ask questions, I can answer all the questions that you ask. But when you tell me, okay, I've heard enough, I don't want to hear any more, then I have to stop.
Okay, well, that's interesting. All right, you know, as opposed to being, that's the way someone should come around to something, is learning on their own because they're interested and then maybe deciding it's for them.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the Baha'i Faith?
I've been a Baha'i about 25 years. 25
years. Was your family members, or is this on your own?
I am the daughter of a deacon in a Pentecostal church.
Okay, so that's interesting. I
so
like that. What did your father think?
Oh, not particularly pleased with the idea.
A little surprised. Did he understand, or did he come to understand later, maybe, when you talked to him?
No.
Would you mind if I asked them what made you, I assume you were kind of following that faith with your father and your family, and you went to this. What was it that made you transition?
There were several things. Probably chief among them was that one of the requirements of the Baha'i Faith, one of the teachings of the Baha'i Faith, is that we eliminate all forms of prejudice. And so it's against spiritual laws in the Baha'i Faith to hold segregated worship services. So our communities are very diverse, and one of the things that no one could explain to me was, why do we have an all-black church here and an all-white church here, and they're not talking to each other, let alone not worshiping with each other. So that was one of the things that got my attention initially. The equality of women and men. In the Baha'i Faith, women and men are considered equal, and the only time there's an exception to that is if you can only afford to educate your sons or your daughters. The Baha'i Faith requires you educate your daughters, because girls become mothers, the first educators of the next generation.
That's interesting.
So these were practical principles with spiritual bases that got my attention.
That is very, very interesting. I'll tell you, I just learned a bunch from you. I was telling her I grew up in Evanston, Illinois before I moved out of there, and there's a wonderful, you were telling me, Baha'i temple that's been there on Lake Michigan, and you said it's been renovated?
It's recently renovated, so if you're in the Chicago area, go. And no matter where you are, I know you're available online. If your viewers are outside of the Nashville area, if you go to the National Baha'i website, Baha'i.us, then you can find the nearest activity
wherever you live. And as far as here, go to NashvilleBaha'i.org, and that will fill you in. You can look at the schedule of all the events which start tomorrow.
You'll need to click through to the event page once you're on that page, and it's not /event, but just go to that page, click on event, and then go to neighboring events.
Carol, thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too.
Have a good day. We'll be right back to wrap things up right after this.